He had believed that his badge made him invincible, until he brought the wrong person to court. He assumed she was just another African-American woman he could bully, until she showed up in the courtroom and shattered his career. The highway was almost empty that night. A few cars passed by under the weak glow of their headlights, bouncing off the slick pavement. Streetlights flickered, stretching long shadows over the road outside Montgomery, Alabama. It was just after 11:30 p.m., the kind of late hour when most people just want to be home. Lieutenant Commander Talia Monroe had been driving for nearly 2 hours, her fingertips tapping lightly on the steering wheel as she hummed along to a soft jazz melody playing over her speakers. Clad in a simple, dark sweater and jeans with her hair pulled back, Talia didn't stand out. At least, she thought so. Then, red and blue lights suddenly appeared in her rearview mirror. They were closing in fast. Her stomach clenched. Not from fear, for she knew the routine by now, but from exhaustion. She signaled, changed lanes, and eased her car onto the shoulder. Pulling the vehicle to a stop, she parked, took a measured breath, and kept both hands visible on the wheel. Her military background had taught her well. A white patrol car pulled up directly behind her. Officer Bradley Cole took his time stepping out, moving with the assumption that his authority demanded unquestioning compliance. His heavy boots thumped against the asphalt, one hand poised on his belt, while the other grasped a flashlight that blinked alive as he approached. Talia glanced at him through her side mirror. The light caught on his badge, revealing his name, Cole, along with his identification and registration details. Without offering greeting or explanation, his voice came out flat, rehearsed, and impatient. Talia met his gaze in the mirror before slowly reaching into the glove compartment to retrieve her documents. "Was I speeding, officer?" she asked evenly. Cole didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took the papers from her hand, holding them just a bit out of reach as he inspected her car. "Tail lights seem off," he remarked. Talia frowned. "That can't be right." Finally, Cole looked up. "Are you arguing with me?" For an instant, the air grew thick with the unspoken contest of authority versus defiance, a moment Talia had witnessed in military briefings and training exercises meant to prepare sailors for the unpredictable world outside the service. Though she knew better than to push too hard, she also understood her rights. "I'm just saying," she replied calmly. "I had them checked a few weeks back. If there's an issue, I can have it fixed." "Step out of the car," Cole commanded abruptly, as if her explanation were barely heard. Talia exhaled slowly, glancing toward the sparse traffic ahead. No witnesses. With a quick tap of her fingers on the steering wheel, she reached for the door handle. "Mind telling me why?" she asked. Cole merely tilted his head in a dismissive, smirking manner. "Because I said so." Letting his words hang, Talia unbuckled her seatbelt and pushed open the door. The night air felt cooler than she anticipated as she stepped onto the pavement. Her stance was relaxed, yet alert. She wasn't looking for trouble, but she wouldn't tolerate being bullied. Cole took a cautious step back, sizing her up, determining just how far he could push his advantage. As she hesitated momentarily, he advanced. "Are you resisting?" he asked. "No," she replied evenly. "I'm merely asking a question." A fleeting mix of irritation and amusement flashed across his face. Then, unexpectedly, he reached for his radio. "We got a non-compliant driver over here," he muttered, then louder as he turned toward her. Her pulse quickened, but Talia maintained her composure. "Officer, I need you to understand something," she said, voice low yet firm. "I know exactly what I'm permitted to do, and I know precisely the limits you must respect." Clearly displeased, Cole's jaw tightened. "You're under arrest," he snapped, reaching for her wrist. Talia moved swiftly, evading his grasp by stepping back just enough. "Under arrest for obstructing an officer," he declared, as he produced a pair of cuffs and secured them tightly, even before shoving her toward the patrol car. "You don't know what you're doing," she murmured. Cole chuckled as he forced her into the back seat. "Lady, I know exactly what I'm doing." But the rigid plastic of the seat dug uncomfortably into her back as she sat still, her wrists burning from the tight cuffs. With a heavy thud, the door shut behind her, sealing her inside. Stepping back to his vehicle, Cole muttered into his radio, while Talia's gaze fell on the partition separating her from him. Her calm, reflective face stared back at her from its surface. Beneath that tranquil exterior simmered a determination forged by combat drills, high-risk operations, and intense interrogations overseas. Yet this was different. A man intoxicated by his badge and convinced of his untouchability. Minutes passed, first 1, then 5, then 10. Talia adjusted her hand subtly to test the cuffs, noticing just how intentionally tight they were. Soon, the driver's side door swung open again, and Cole slid in, whistling to himself with a sneer. "Let's take a little ride," he muttered, fastening his seatbelt across his chest. Talia said nothing. He switched the car into gear and merged back onto the road. The patrol car lurched forward as the flashing red and blue lights painted eerie reflections in the side mirrors, trailing behind them. "You know," Cole said after a moment, "most people keep quiet when I tell them to step out." Talia exhaled sharply. "Most officers don't arrest people for questioning a traffic stop," she stated. Cole laughed, shaking his head. "Lady, you must really think you're somebody." She met his gaze through the glass. "I don't think I do," she said dryly, and that retort caused him to pause, just for a second. His knuckles tightened around the steering wheel, a brief flicker of irritation marring his smug exterior before he quickly masked it. "You in the military?" he asked, his tone shifting. "Yeah, figured as much," she replied softly. "You carry that above-the-law attitude too well," he smirked. "Bet you thought I'd back off if you threw that around." Still, she remained silent. Cole clicked his tongue. "What a shame," he mused. "If you'd just kept quiet, we wouldn't be in this mess." Her jaw clenched at the implication that her behavior was the cause. In the distance, the police station emerged, a squat gray brick building near the main road, its lot nearly deserted at this late hour. Processing was slow, and for now, it seemed, she was the only one being processed that night. Cole pulled into a designated spot near the entrance, turned off his engine, and cast a glance at Talia through the partition. "Gotta say," he murmured, "I do love it when things are simple." Before she could reply, he got out of the car, slamming the door behind him. Moments later, her door swung open. "Let's go," he ordered. Talia twisted her wrist as she stepped out. The cuffs bit into her skin. They hadn't been loosened at all. Keeping her chin high, she followed him inside, past a disinterested desk sergeant, and into the processing area. The stale odor of old coffee and sweat hung in the air. A cold, metal bench lined the far wall, with a steel door leading to the holding cells beyond. For a brief moment, Cole uncuffed her just enough to process the booking. Fingerprints, mugshot, the whole demeaning routine. The officers behind the desk barely looked up, merely going through the mechanical motions. Talia had seen this indifference before. It was the kind that allowed men like Cole to continue their abuses of power. When it was all over, he grabbed her wrist again and marched her toward the cell. "You think you're smart, huh?" he muttered under his breath. Talia's eyes narrowed slightly. "I don't have to be smart," she countered coolly, her defiance evident as his grip tightened just a bit more. She knew that comment bothered him. "Enjoy your stay," he sneered, shoving her through the cell entrance. Talia caught herself before stumbling. She paused, watching as the metal bars slid shut behind her. Cole tapped on them briefly, a mocking smirk on his face before he turned and walked away. The latch clicked into place, and Talia sank onto the cold bench, the chill of the metal seeping through her jeans and grounding her in the harsh reality of the night. The cell was sparse, 4 walls illuminated by a single, flickering light and tainted with the faint odor of stale sweat and disinfectant. She had spent nights in far worse conditions, in places where the threat was more than mere discomfort. Still, her anger simmered. Through the bars, the quiet murmur of officers at the front desk, the shuffle of papers, and the clatter of a coffee cup resonated in the background. Talia exhaled steadily, her breathing controlled, just as she'd been drilled to do in basic training. Heavy footsteps echoed again. Talia recognized them immediately before the figure came into view. Officer Garrett Price. His gait bore the hallmark arrogance of a man who thought himself invincible. He stopped just in front of her cell, arms folded and that self-satisfied smirk firmly in place. "Come on, companion," he said, though his greeting was void of warmth. She remained silent. Price stepped closer to the bars, lowering his voice. "If you'd just played along, you wouldn't be here right now." A slow, defiant smile curved Talia's lips. "Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be." For a split second, Price's confident grin faltered, revealing a flash of uncertainty in his eyes before he quickly masked it. He scoffed and glanced around at the nearly empty holding area. "No one's coming for you tonight, lady," he said, with a dismissive shrug. "Looks like you'll have plenty of time to think about that attitude." Unmoved, Talia simply listened as Price leaned in. "Here's the thing. Folks like you believe that the rules just don't apply, that a little confidence is enough to dodge consequences." She let him continue, letting his words roll off her as though they were nothing more than background noise. Then, as if on cue, another officer approached from the hallway, a younger man in his late 20s, clad in a standard uniform, holding a clipboard. The sergeant's voice carried a note of hesitancy. "We got a call, Price." Price barely glanced at the newcomer. The officer shifted uneasily and added, "I think you need to see this." Price frowned, then gave Talia one last dismissive look before striding away. Talia leaned back and listened as the hushed conversation continued. She caught fragments of mention: a lawyer, a call from higher up, questions about why she was being detained. Price's tone had dropped, edged now with sharp annoyance, as the younger officer stumbled over his words, clearly unhappy with the situation. Before long, heavy footsteps heralded Price's return. He stormed back with his jaw set tight and fists clenched. "What the hell did you do?" he demanded. Talia leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "I didn't do anything," she said steadily, tilting her head just slightly. "But people talk, and some of us have friends in very influential places." At that, Price's face darkened with a dawning realization. For the first time, he saw that his power was slipping. He spun on his heel, muttering under his breath, and disappeared down the corridor. Talia exhaled slowly. It wouldn't be long now. When the truth finally emerged, Price would regret every single decision that had landed him in this predicament. The following morning, soft light streamed through the narrow courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. The air inside was crisp, the kind that settled deep in your bones if you lingered too long. Talia stood near the defendant's table, her posture composed and her gaze sharp. Gone were the handcuffs and the drab orange jumpsuit. Instead, she sported a perfectly tailored navy blazer over a simple blouse, exuding an undeniable presence. And she wasn't alone. Beside her, her attorney, Marianne Jacobs, efficiently flipped through a pile of documents with barely a glance. Before long, the heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom swung open and Price entered. He still carried himself as if he owned the room, with squared shoulders and his chin held high, but there was now a stiffness in his step and a trace of uncertainty in his eyes. Talia caught his gaze. He quickly diverted his eyes. Good, she thought, as the judge entered and the courtroom quieted. Judge Alan Kirkland, an older man with a weary expression and glasses perched low on his nose, took his seat. "All right," he sighed, glancing over the case files. "Let's get to it." The prosecutor, a middle-aged man with neatly combed hair, cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we have evidence suggesting that the defendant, Lieutenant Commander Talia Monroe, was unlawfully detained without probable cause. Furthermore, we have indications of a pattern of misconduct involving the arresting officer, Sergeant Bradley Cole." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Price shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw tightening. Judge Kirkland peered over his glasses. "Sergeant Cole, care to explain?" Cole leaned forward, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, the defendant was uncooperative during what was supposed to be a routine traffic stop." The prosecutor interjected, "Uncooperative? Heard that correctly?" Raising an eyebrow, he continued, "Lieutenant Commander Monroe's record speaks for itself. A distinguished military career, a Naval Academy graduate, multiple commendations, and no criminal history or prior citations. And yet, you arrested her over a broken tail light?" Silence fell as Cole opened his mouth and then closed it abruptly. The prosecutor went on, "Additionally, an internal review of your arrest record reveals a disproportionate number of traffic stops involving black drivers in this district." The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Price's face grew visibly darker. Judge Kirkland sighed, setting down the file. "Sergeant, I don't like what I'm hearing. The body cam footage clearly shows a different story. A calm defendant and an overly aggressive approach on your part." A video was played on the courtroom screen. As the footage ended, the judge leaned forward. "Sergeant Cole, you violated protocol, made an unlawful arrest, and omitted key details in your report. Consequently, all charges against Lieutenant Commander Monroe are hereby dismissed. I further order a full internal investigation." Price's eyes widened as he sat stunned, while Talia remained composed and left without a word. For once the tables had turned. For once, someone had held him accountable. Later that day, outside the courthouse, a cafe buzzed with talk of the case. A message popped up on Price's phone, suspended and possibly facing charges. A small smile curled on Talia's lips as she stepped out into the daylight. Today was her victory. Walking confidently through the city streets, her phone rang. It was her captain. "Did you see the news?" he asked. "How are you feeling?" "Like I did what needed to be done," Talia replied coolly. The captain continued, "The Department of Defense might want you to speak on this matter." "I'm not sure I want to be a headline," she remarked softly. "Already are," he replied, acknowledging that this wasn't just about her. Price was merely a part of a system that had long oppressed too many. But now, someone had stood up, and change had begun. "You might even get a call from the mayor. They want to recognize your professionalism." Talia raised an eyebrow and smirked. "That's ironic. I'll think about it." After ending the call, as she crossed the street, she noticed a mother walking hand in hand with her young son, carefree and laughing. Talia paused to watch them. This was the reason she fought, not just for herself, but for every black child who deserved to grow up without fear of abuse from those in uniform. Taking a deep breath, she resumed her path, her steps steady and resolute. For this battle had never been solely hers. Unchecked power breeds abuse, and real change comes only when we hold the system accountable. What happened to Talia is happening every day to countless ordinary people without rank, support, or evidence. That's why we must all speak up, demand better, and never remain silent. If this story made you pause, share it. If it stirred anger or opened your eyes, talk about it. True change begins with real conversations. And remember, no matter your rank or title, if you're a person of color, you are not immune to injustice. Silence is never the answer. If I were in her shoes, I would continue pushing forward, speaking up, supporting others, and fighting for a just system. Will racism truly end by 2030? Perhaps not. But if more people find the courage to stand up, that day will come all the sooner. This story is a work of fiction created to raise awareness about issues of accountability, justice, and the importance of respecting every individual. We firmly reject all forms of violence, prejudice, and injustice. Viewer discretion is advised.